Yo, what's going on, guys? It's J-Mass, and why don't you take a look at where I am right now? As you can see, I'm standing on a railroad bridge right in the beautiful town of Florida, Massachusetts. And yes, there is a town in Massachusetts called Florida. Wait a minute. Something seems really off right now. Like something seems so familiar. Like I've said these same exact words in the same exact place. I don't know what it is, but I just get the feeling that something is just so familiar. Like I'm having serious deja vu right now. What is it?
1 year earlier.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's J-Mass, and why don't you take a look at where I am right now? As you can see, I'm standing on a railroad bridge right in the beautiful town of Florida, Massachusetts. And yes, there's a town in Massachusetts called Florida. So yeah, if you can't tell, it's officially been 1 whole year since I posted my very first video on the channel. Now, ironically, the first video that I posted on this channel was actually the second video that I filmed for it, but we're not going to get into that right now. Nonetheless, it's officially been 1 year since my very first post on the J-Mass YouTube channel on May 15th, 2022. And as of the time of posting this video, it's now officially 1 year later, May 15th, 2023. Now, in that very first video, we actually explored the Hoosac Tunnel, which is probably one of the creepiest and most disturbing landmarks here in Massachusetts. And we're going to be revisiting it today, so I'm really excited about that. You know, funnily enough, my first video is actually still my most viewed video on the channel. It's sitting at around 23,700 views right now. But despite that, I made a few minor mistakes here and there.
Hey, J-Mass, J-Nerd here. Throughout the first Hoosac Tunnel video, you repeatedly pronounced the word Hoosac wrong. It's Hoosac, not Hoosac, as you so eloquently put it. So, yeah, you're a fucking idiot. All right, I didn't say Hoosac that much.
Hoosac, 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 Hoosac. All right, yes, I pronounced it wrong the entire time. It's pronounced Hoosac, not Hoosac, which I surprisingly didn't find out until months after I'd posted the video. And unfortunately, despite that being my most viewed video, it is my first video, and I did make a few other minor errors and mistakes here and there throughout the whole thing, which, you know, isn't really a big deal because I did fix the errors on the bottom of the screen with some text when it happened, but nonetheless, there were a few errors and mistakes I made here and there, and there's just little things and little quirks that I don't normally do anymore in my later videos. In my defense, though, it was still early on in my YouTube channel career. You know, I hadn't refined my style yet, and I was still figuring things out. Plus, it was actually the first time I ever began to speak in front of a camera for a YouTube audience, so that kind of freaked me out a little bit. Also, little funny thing, in the first 4 or 5 videos on my YouTube channel, you'll actually notice that I was wearing earbuds. That's because I was an idiot and thought that wearing earbuds would actually improve the audio quality of the videos. It really didn't. I don't know if you can see this water dripping everywhere. You know, I assume from all the runoff from up top in the mountains. This tunnel is crazy. I was also going through this really weird phase back then where I was constantly gelling my hair like every single day. So in a lot of my early videos, you know, my hair looks wicked stiff and it's like super gelled up, which is like in stark contrast to nowadays because I just let my hair loose and it's always going crazy in the wind. But, you know, that brings me to my overall point with this video. Now that it's officially been 1 year since my very first post on the J-Mass YouTube channel, I thought it'd be fun to come back and revisit the Hoosac Tunnel. You know, I want to give you guys the history and facts and information that I missed last time. You know, give it to you a little better this time and just re-explore and see what the Hoosac Tunnel has to offer. It gives off a really creepy aura. I mean, the history is insane for the Hoosac Tunnel. And I'm excited to just revisit it and re-explore it and see what I missed, you know, from last year. So why don't you guys join me as we revisit and re-explore the Hoosac Tunnel here in beautiful Florida, Massachusetts. Also, don't forget to stick around until the end of the video, as it has been my 1 year anniversary. I do kind of want to make some remarks and comments about that, so stick around until the end of the video. But we're going to get right into exploring and revisiting the Hoosac Tunnel for the first time in a year. I'm very excited. Let's check it out. Also, just really quick, guys, before we move on and check out the Hoosac Tunnel, if you love urban exploration and traveling, you know, learning about weird history, exploring weird sites, don't forget to subscribe to the JMass YouTube channel, because I'm always doing that kind of stuff, especially here in New England. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at JMassOfficial. That's at JMassOfficial. Always posting the stuff I'm doing and the sites I'm seeing there too. So anyways, let's get on to it. 1 year later, the Hoosac Tunnel. All right, guys, and we're officially back 1 year later at the Hoosac Tunnel here in Florida, Massachusetts. Now, right now, we're standing in front of the east portal of the Hoosac Tunnel. As I mentioned, the east portal is in Florida, but the west portal is all the way in North Adams, Massachusetts. Now, in my opinion, the west portal is a little more difficult to access, not as interesting either. But right here is the east portal, and this is the really cool spot, as you can see by the gorgeous stone architecture in the archway. But anyways, this is a pretty long tunnel. It's around 5 miles in length at exactly 4.75 miles long. It's a pretty damn long tunnel. Now, construction began in 1851 and officially ended in 1875. So basically all throughout the mid to late 1800s, this thing was constructed. The initial projections were that it would be $2 million to build, and it ended up being $21 million. And again, that's $21 million in 1875 money. So yeah, very expensive. You can see as we slowly make our way in that this thing is super pitch black and all barren rock. Now there's a little bit of a stone block coating right here, but once you get in, it's pretty much just all barren, blasted rock. And there's also water everywhere. I do remember when I came here last time, there was water dripping everywhere. My shirt was just covered in water. It's very damp in here. Now, another thing I want to make very clear at the start of this video, this railroad line that I was walking across, it is active. One thing that I previously mentioned in my original video a year ago that is very incorrect is that this is an abandoned railroad tunnel. It's most certainly not abandoned. It's actually very active. Trains consistently come here. And that being said, it's a very dangerous location. So this is an active railroad tunnel. It's currently owned by Pan Am Southern, but for much of its history, it was actually owned by the Boston and Maine Railroad, which was eventually acquired by Pan Am Railways. So again, active railroad, be extremely careful, and I would highly not recommend you go deep into this tunnel. I'm probably not going to go as deep inside as I did last time, just because it is really dangerous, but I will delve in a little bit and show you guys around. And I did bring a flashlight this time, so hopefully that makes it a little better. So outside right now, it's about, I want to say 75 degrees Fahrenheit. It's actually a pretty hot day out today, you know, clear blue skies, very hot, very humid. And I swear inside this tunnel, it's about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Like, I think there's at least a 20, 30 degree drop in temperature. It's very cool in here, very damp, very moist. And this is the other side over here, the entrance of the east portal. So again, very dark, very damp, very cold. I can only imagine coming here in the winter time, must be freezing. And I did mention this already, but I want to direct your attention to the barren rock. That's probably the thing I find the most fascinating about the Hoosac Tunnel is when you walk through this thing, you're literally inside of a cave. If you don't know, the Hoosac Tunnel goes right underneath the Hoosac Range, which is out here in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, the very western end of Massachusetts. It's actually an extension of the Green Mountains of Vermont. But that's where this tunnel goes underneath, right underneath a mountain range. So we're very deep underground right now. And you can tell by all of this rock. If you're curious about the methods they use to mine this out, you have to keep in mind that this was the mid-1800s, you know, 1851 to 1875. So they didn't have the type of tunnel boring machinery and equipment that we have today. A lot of this was actually hand dug. And the way they did it was they had one person on the east portal, you know, here in Florida, Massachusetts, and another team in the west portal in North Adams. And there was also a central shaft in the middle where people also dug there. But anyways, people dug from 4 different sides and they met eventually in the middle. But hand digging wasn't the only method used. There were also very early forms of nitroglycerin that were used in this tunnel. The nitroglycerin obviously wasn't as stable as the type we use today, but it did help speed up the process a little bit. They also used other things like compressed air and very early forms of dynamite. So imagine digging out a 4.75 mile long tunnel underneath a mountain range using extremely rudimentary, juvenile forms of explosives and hand mining in the mid-19th century. It is insane that this thing was built, and it's as long and as big as it is today. Very impressive, to say the least. All right, guys, so now we're going to touch upon a little bit more of a serious subject. So if you don't know, the Hoosac Tunnel has a really disturbing nickname. Many people call it the Bloody Pit. And the reason it's called the Bloody Pit is because there are 135 verified deaths here. But actually, a lot of people say the death count is as high as 200. So theoretically, there were 200 people who died here. But as we know right now, there were 135 deaths. And people died in so many gruesome ways. Explosives, fires, falling accidents, falling from ladders, falling from mine shafts and scaffolding, rocks falling from the ceiling. And from what I've read, there were at least 1 or 2 murders. So it's a very deadly tunnel, has a very deadly history. And obviously, again, it was the mid-19th century when this thing was being built. Working conditions are not like they were today. It was very dangerous. So a lot of people died here. It's a very somber location. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you guys about the scariest and bloodiest accident that actually occurred here. So if you guys don't know, there's a really famous landmark within the Hoosac Tunnel itself called the Central Shaft. The Central Shaft basically began above the tunnel, and it was sort of like a tunnel bore that went underneath, not directly in the middle, but almost halfway between the east portal and the west portal. It was basically a way to speed up mining, to get the tunnel bored out faster. So they had people on the east portal and the west portal digging, but there were also people in the middle, in the central shaft, which helped speed up production and get this thing tunneled out. On October 17th, 1867, the most deadly accident during the construction of the Hoosac Tunnel occurred in the central shaft. There were a couple of men on a hoisting system. They were being hoisted below into the central shaft to continue mining out the tunnel. But eventually a fire occurred when fumes were ignited by a candle, and 13 men were plunged 500 feet down into the central shaft, over 500 feet. When they fell down into the shaft, the hoist system broke, and plumbing systems were actually destroyed, which eventually led the shaft to be filled with water. Now, these 13 men were essentially trapped inside. They could do nothing. They couldn't get help. They couldn't get out. They were basically stuck in there for a while. Later on, when a party came over to see if the 13 men were alive, they actually discovered that most of them had immediately died on impact by the explosion. But some had actually died of drowning, and even worse, some had died of suffocation. But what's worse is that while they were down there in the central shaft, trapped, needed help, they had actually had enough time to construct a makeshift raft to try and get out. Pretty scary. So yeah, this tunnel's earned the nickname the Bloody Pit for a reason. Lots of deaths, lots of injuries. It was just a different time here in America where workers' rights just were not at the forefront of any industry. And again, the central shaft accident, which led to 13 deaths in a very gruesome fashion, from explosion and drowning and suffocation, really put a sour mark on this place. Now, because of all of this, because of all of the deaths and destruction, a lot of people assume that the Hoosac Tunnel is extremely haunted and that there's a really big paranormal presence here. I will be upfront with you guys and say I've never really been that deep into the paranormal and the supernatural. Never really been an avid believer of that stuff, but I see where they're coming from. It's a very disturbing location, and knowing the history and all the lives that were lost, I can see it. But there's a lot of ghost stories in this place. of people seeing the spirits of those who lost their lives. Well, if you guys didn't believe me earlier when I said it's very wet in here, I am pretty much covered in water droplets. Again, it's extremely damp here in the Hoosac Tunnel. There's like water dropping everywhere. You know, funny enough, my previous video before this one was actually the Clinton Tunnel out in Clinton, Massachusetts. Pretty much a much smaller version of the Hoosac Tunnel here, except it doesn't have an active railroad. There's actually no tracks in it anymore. But it also had the same issue where, you know, it's just so damp, there's water everywhere. But it makes sense. I mean, we're underneath the Hoosac Range. I'm sure there's so much topsoil and water leaking through the rocks, you know? It's kind of crazy. But anyways, guys, that was the interior of the Hoosac Tunnel. I really don't want to go any deeper inside for obvious reasons. If you're trapped inside there when a train comes by, you're pretty much fucked. You either have to just run out immediately or you have to hide on the side of the tracks, which that alone is really dangerous. I've heard some horror stories about people getting trapped in there, so I don't want to go too deep in there. But I hope that at least satisfied your urge to see what the inside of the Hoosac Tunnel looks like. It's pretty crazy. So some other fun facts I want to give you guys about the Hoosac Tunnel. At the time of its completion, the Hoosac Tunnel was actually the world's second longest underground railroad tunnel. That's right, the world's second longest tunnel at the time of its completion. And it was also North America's longest railroad tunnel until 1916. As of today, it still does hold a pretty impressive record. It's actually the world's sixth longest railroad tunnel. Again, it's 4.75 miles long, nearly 5 miles total in length. All of that built in the mid-19th century. And you can actually see above there, they have 1877 marked. That doesn't mean that this was finished in 1877. That's actually, I forget what bought it. There was a railroad company that actually purchased the east portal here. I'll leave below what company that was, but 1877 was the year that this railroad was purchased. As I mentioned, the Boston and Maine Railroad actually operated this main rail here. Actually, there used to be 2 railroad lines that went underneath. Today, there's only one, this one right here. But at one point, the Hoosac Tunnel actually had 2 railroad lines going through. Just to give you guys some perspective as to how big the Hoosac Tunnel's east portal is, I'm gonna film myself going over to the tunnel from inside and showing you just how big it is. I tried doing that last time in the previous video a year ago. Didn't work out so well because I didn't own a tripod at the time, but we're gonna do it this time. So let's see how big the east portal is compared to myself. Watch this. Check this out, guys. Another thing I really remember liking last time I came here was this little canalway. As you can see, there's water flowing through this man-made canal, going all the way over there. I remember thinking this was really cute, really gorgeous little area. When I looked deeper into it though, apparently there's actually some waterfalls way up there. And I didn't see that last time, never been there, so I figured before we leave the Hoosac Tunnel area, you know, might as well go check out those waterfalls. So join me in a few minutes. We're gonna go check out the waterfalls up there, see where all of this water is coming from. And then after that, I have 2 more surprises in store. But so far, really cool. I'm glad we're revisiting the Hoosac Tunnel. I feel like I'm getting a much more enriched experience this time than I did last time. So we're now gonna be making our way over to the waterfalls. Just wanna give you a cool look at this stone foundation right here. And there's a lot of stone foundations in this area. I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the video, but if you remember that railroad bridge I was standing on all the way over there, that railroad bridge actually spans the Deerfield River. And this place right here is known as the Cascade Brook. So the Cascade Brook actually leaks into the Deerfield River over there. Pretty gorgeous area, some beautiful scenery. I'm excited to see what those waterfalls are like. So yeah, let's make our way over. All right, check this out, guys. Look how beautiful this is. We made it to the waterfall. Or I guess the Cascade. I mean, this is called Cascade Brook after all. But this is such a beautiful area. And as I mentioned, it's directly behind the Hoosac Tunnel. There's a little trail that goes along that canal.
You follow it and it brings you right here to this majestic natural scenery. Another really interesting thing I want to point your direction to, as you'll see, I'm on this trail right here, but there's this huge mountain that goes up right here. The Hoosac Tunnel actually goes directly underneath this mountain. So at any given time, there could actually be a train barreling underneath right next to us. It really does put some perspective into the location of the Hoosac Tunnel and its railroad system, directly underneath the Hoosac Range here in the Berkshires. Really crazy shit. But I think we're gonna make our way over. I have two more things I want to show you guys, so I'll let you know now. There's a little hermit cave right by the Hoosac Tunnels to the right of it. In the first video, I checked out that little hermit cave. There wasn't too much going on, and unfortunately, I still couldn't figure out what it was used for originally when it was built. But if I had to guess, it was probably some original house or storage facility or, you know, utility closet, something like that, that was probably used during the construction of the Hoosac Tunnel, specifically on the east portal. We're gonna check out that little cave. Then we're gonna check out the central shaft. Now, obviously we can't go inside the central shaft, but we are gonna check out the location where the central shaft is located, from the above ground section that is. So we're gonna check that out, which I didn't do last time. So I'm excited to see that. Well, let's make our way from the waterfall over there. Absolutely beautiful. So this right here is the hermit cave I was discussing earlier. If you'll remember, I went here in the first video as well. Again, absolutely no clue what this was used for. My best guess is some sort of utility storage or, you know, maintenance shed, something like that. Because when you go inside, there's really not that much. Like, there's a big tank. Actually, you can see it right there, but not sure what this was. But I do want to go in here one more time. So let's see what's going on. God, there's so many bugs. Yeah, you got the huge tank still here. The whole thing is just hollowed out with rock, you know, exposed rock. And you actually got brick on the ceiling. Got a little brick ceiling right there, rock walls, a tank, leaves, and a fuck ton of bugs. So, not sure what this little, you know, this little cave is. No clue. I'd be curious to find out. And it's actually nestled underneath all of these boulders and rocks right here. I don't know, pretty interesting spot.
All right, guys, but I think that's about it for the east portal of the Hoosac Tunnel here in Florida, Massachusetts. Really cool spot. As you got to see, you know, you got all the barren rocks still left behind from its construction. It's just a really creepy and disturbing place, yet the history is just fascinating. I'm really glad we got to come back and re-explore and revisit the Hoosac Tunnel. And I hope you guys appreciated that too, because I think I've found a new appreciation for this place. But yeah, last time at the east portal of the Hoosac Tunnel right here. Really cool spot. Very shortly, we're going to be checking out the central shaft. Obviously not inside, I can't do that, but we are going to be checking out the above ground section of the central shaft, which I do believe is also in Florida. But yeah, let's go check out the central shaft and say goodbye to the east portal of the Hoosac Tunnel 1 year later. Really quick, guys, just want to show you these two stones right here, which have some dedications on them. This one is dedicated to the men who built the Hoosac Tunnel, 1851 to 1875, which, as I mentioned, is the period of construction for this tunnel. And then right here you got Walt Rice, Boston and Maine Railroad, 47 years. I assume he was probably the operator in charge of the Boston and Maine Railroad, specifically this one right here. But again, 135 verified deaths, but around 200 possible ones. Pretty crazy to think about the vast number of people who succumbed at this location. Here we are, guys, the central shaft. And of course, this is the above ground section. We obviously can't go inside the central shaft, not only because it's trespassing, but because it is extremely fucking dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, that's probably a death sentence going inside that thing. But nonetheless, this is the central shaft. I've seen pictures of it online. So because of the way it looks right now, I believe they're doing some construction. It looks like they're actually building something even. I'm not really sure what's going on, but there's a lot of construction equipment here. So if you don't know, the central shaft is sort of located in the middle of the tunnel. Not directly in the middle, but kind of in the middle, in between the east and west portals.
It's actually 1,028 feet deep from up here all the way down below. And back when they were creating the central shaft, they actually used a hoist system that lowered workers in and out to mine it out, whether through hand digging or the use of nitroglycerin, all that kind of stuff. You might hear a low humming noise while I'm standing here. That's actually the giant fan that's over here. And I believe you actually might be able to see one of the fans right here. I think this could be one of them. They probably took it out. I don't know, maybe this is gonna be a new fan they're gonna install, but basically there's a giant fan here at the central shaft, which is used to, you know, disperse fumes and smoke from the trains. Every time a train goes through the Hoosac Tunnel, it produces a ton of fumes, and the fan here in the central shaft is supposed to help mitigate that issue. And last but not least, we do have to pay our respects right here. As I mentioned previously in this video, there was a horrible accident in the central shaft. 13 men unfortunately perished due to drowning and explosions and even suffocation. There was a huge accident in the central shaft. They fell 583 feet below and they were trapped, and all of them succumbed to the suffering. None came out alive. These are all of their names right here. Victims of the Hoosac Tunnel vent shaft fire. Pretty sad, pretty depressing, and by far one of the worst accidents of the Hoosac Tunnel's history.
But anyways, guys, that was the Hoosac Tunnel in Florida, Massachusetts. Today we checked out the tunnel itself, you know, the east portal. Went inside, checked out the exterior, the interior, and, you know, knowing the insane history and the background information really gives you a new perspective on the place, you know. As I said, there are 135 verified deaths, but many people chalk it up to 200 deaths. There was a massive loss of human life during 1851 and 1875 when that tunnel was being constructed. They used very primitive technology, you know, nitroglycerin in its early form, you know, hand mining, all that kind of stuff. Very different than today, you know, the type of technology we have. That's why so many lives were lost, and, you know, workers' rights just weren't where they are now, you know what I mean? But it's really crazy to think about. But that was the Hoosac Tunnel. I'm really glad I got to visit 1 year later. You know, I went back a year later and just found a newfound appreciation for it. And I hope you guys liked this revisit at the Hoosac Tunnel. But that brings me into my next point. 1 year of JMass. It's my 1 year anniversary since I posted my very first video. Now, one thing you guys might notice, if you look at my channel, I actually started the channel in February 2021, but I didn't actually post anything until that first Hoosac Tunnel video, all the way back in May 15th, 2022. So that's really what I'm counting as my 1 year anniversary. And yeah, I'm gonna give a few, you know, last remarks and comments about that. And I'm actually coming to you live right now from Spruce's Park in Williamstown, Massachusetts, which, if you don't know, is actually the second video I posted on this channel. So just revisiting that. By the way, fun fact about Spruce's Park, this was a former mobile home community, now a park you can walk around. Absolutely gorgeous here. You know, guys, it is absolutely insane that it's officially been 1 year since I first started posting on this YouTube channel. You know, for years now, I've always wanted to create a YouTube channel and just share my explorations with everyone, because I've always been exploring. You know, I've been into urban exploration, I want to say, since 2013. So at least a decade now, I've been into urban exploration. And, you know, I'd never really filmed it. All I ever did was take photos and pictures. But in 2022, I finally decided, you know what, I'm gonna share this with the world. I started filming and I do not regret it. It's been a lot of fun showing off the adventures and sights I've been seeing, especially with an audience who really appreciates that. And I kind of want to give a huge thank you to everyone who's stuck around with me this year. Doesn't matter how long you've been here, I appreciate all of you, I really do. I think it's awesome that there's a community of people who love and appreciate the same kind of thing I do, whether it's urban exploration or sightseeing or travel or New England history. It's just fun to share it with you guys. And, you know, right here, I'm actually gonna list a lot of people who've been down with me throughout the last year. All of you guys, I really appreciate you. You've really made this channel worth it. And I think it's awesome that I see you guys regularly, whether
through the YouTube comments or on Instagram. You guys are always hitting me up, telling me how much you like the videos. Really appreciate that. So just want to give a huge shout out to all the people right here. You make this channel worth it. I really hope I didn't forget anyone, but I'm going to try to include as many people as I can. But yeah, 1 year, guys, it's been crazy. I'm looking forward to another year, and I have a lot of stuff planned, a lot of stuff going to be coming up. Obviously going to do a lot more New England travel. You know, we still got 6 states in New England we got to thoroughly explore. So definitely look forward to more New England explorations. I am going to be checking out other states, hopefully. You know, I was in New York actually a few times last year. I have some other states and hopefully other countries coming up. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for what this year is going to hold. And I guess I'll see you guys again on May 15th, 2024, the 2-year anniversary. I'm excited for that already. But again, thanks for sticking around, guys, for this last year. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm just excited to see what the future holds. Anyways, that was the Hoosac Tunnel. Oh my God, I almost said Hoosac again. The Hoosac Tunnel in Florida, Massachusetts, and Spruces Park in Williamstown. 2 of the first videos I ever posted on the channel. Glad to bring you guys along as always. And again, huge thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. I love sharing my adventures with the world. It means a lot to me. Catch you guys on the next one. 1 year, baby.